All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Post Game Podcast, a podcast where I'm sitting down with former athletes talking about life after sports, transitioning everything they learned from the field into business, entrepreneurship, and much more. My guest today is a basketball lover, entrepreneur, and partner at Courtside Ventures, the leading early-stage fund focused on sports, lifestyle, and gaming. After exiting his own startup, Krossover, in 2017, he has gone on to play a huge part in the venture capital world at Courtside, leading early investment in companies like The Athletic. His name is Vasu Kulkarni. So very cool having Vasu on. We talked about some of the lessons that he learned himself from playing sports that directly translated into his business success, how venture capitalists are wrong 90% of the time, how he works alongside athletes like Michael Jordan, Steph Curry, and Larry Fitzgerald. And he gets into some of the criteria his team uses when looking at potential investments. So it was awesome having Vasu on, just learning from him here. Really appreciate him taking the time. Go check out the post-game newsletter for more. We'll be back in the saddle this week after missing a few weeks, the past 2 weeks. But back in the saddle with a brand new edition this Thursday, as we approach episode number 100 coming up, which is pretty nuts. So appreciate you tuning in. As always, I hope you enjoy my conversation with Vasu Kulkarni. We are rolling. Vasu Kulkarni, I appreciate you joining me, man. Done some awesome stuff with your career after your time at Penn down the road here from where I am. So yeah, man, thanks. This will be exciting. I'm just looking forward to learning from you here.
Awesome. Glad to be here.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So I would, I really want to hear it. So I was reading up a little bit on your background and just growing up. I thought that maybe you were born in India and then came over here, but the real story is you were born in what, LA, and then ended up back in India.
That's
Can
right.
you just maybe share a little bit of that, and then what got you to Penn? Would love to hear that.
Yeah, born in LA. Lived there for 9 years, and then the '94 earthquake hit in LA, and our house was, I think, about a half a mile from the epicenter, so it was pretty destroyed. We were lucky. It was MLK weekend that weekend when it hit. I think it was Jan 18th, if I'm not mistaken, was the day of the earthquake, and were up in Irvine visiting family, and so we actually escaped the earthquake. If we had been in our house, it's possible that I may not be here talking to you today, given the damage to our place. We got lucky. We were at my uncle's place, and then when we came back and looked at the state of the house, it was a mess. And I think at that point, my parents had already been thinking about moving back to India in general. Just I was getting to be that age where they wanted me to be raised there, as opposed to having to go through high school here. And my sister was 6.5 years younger than me, so she was still a baby and didn't really know what was going on. So I think they saw it as an opportunity to leave. And also, I think the house being destroyed and whatnot, it was like the falling of the American dream for them. Packed our bags and moved us to India in 1995, which was a very different place to India today. I mean, back then, you take a kid out of Southern California that only ate cheese pizza, and you throw him in India where there was no Pizza Hut. And I was a miserable kid for the next 3 years until Pizza Hut finally came in '98. And then I was like, this place isn't so bad anymore. But yeah, that's how I ended up back in Bangalore. And I always say the interesting part of that is obviously my love for basketball started here in the US watching Jordan on TV. And had I been born in India, who knows if I'd even had a chance to really watch as much hoops and have a love for the game. But on the other hand, in terms of playing the game, I'm a 5'10", freshman year of college, I was 135 pounds soaking wet, right? So I don't know if growing up in the US, I would have even had a chance to play on my middle school team, high school team. It's entirely likely I would have been outsized and mismatched, and they would have said, go play chess. Versus in India, I was a big man at 5'10", and was, one of the best players in the city, in the state. high school captain, got to do all of that because the competition was so bad that I was one of the better players. And I think that confidence, in many ways, being a small fish in a big pond versus a big fish in a small pond in India, may have been the reason why I sort of had that confidence to come here and think that I was, that I could actually play and compete on the American stage. So yeah, everything happens for a reason. And as much as I hated my parents for moving me back to India as a kid, I oftentimes think that it may have been the best thing that ever happened to me.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, who knows what would have happened otherwise? And then you got to Philly. There's some decent food in Philly, some decent pizza, and some cheesesteaks out here at the University of Penn. So, what's the story there? Like, did you think? I mean, obviously, I heard you kind of talk about how you went to Penn and thought that there might be a chance for you to play on the team, and then it was like, all right, these guys are pretty good. This is a legit Division I program. So,
Yeah.
maybe just a little bit of that background. Would love to hear you talk about that.
Yeah, no, I showed up as a freshman not knowing anything. I didn't know anything about Penn. I picked Penn because it was an Ivy League school and I got in, and my parents were like, "You're going to an Ivy League school." I wanted to go to UC San Diego and chill on the beach, and they said, "No, you're going to Pennsylvania." And I'd never been to Philadelphia ever in my life. So I just show up on campus as a freshman, and I assume, I'm sort of there to hoop and that I'm somehow going to make the team or get on the team, or by default should have been on the team because I was captain of my team back home. So I show up at the Palestra, I get a meeting with the coaching staff, and I'm like, "Hey, I'm here to play basketball." And they were sort of like, who are you? And they were like, "Well, listen, we've got tryouts or something. There's some sort of open tryout run. You could be a part of that if you want." So I remember being a part of that for a day, and then they were just like, "Yeah, you're not going to make the cut here. You should go back to your dorm room and continue working on your academics." And I was like, "Hey, listen, like I just want to learn. I've never really been coached by a real coach. Like, can I just come to practice and be a part of the program in some way?" And they were like, "No, there's no room for that." So I basically spent the next 3 years playing a ton of pickup. I mean, I was the kid. I'd wake up at noon. I would have already skipped all of my classes that morning, grab a burrito, go to the gym, get shots up until 4 o'clock when people came to play pickup. I'd play pickup with people from 4 to 7, go back to my dorm room, probably copy my homework from my roommate, and then go back to the gym at 10 p.m. and we would hoop from 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. And that was basically my life for the first 3 years of Penn. Just making through classes, like skirting by with, not failing grades, but just shy of failing grades. And then finally as a senior, there was, tryouts again. And luckily I was good enough at this point to make the cut, and get a spot on the JV team to actually get to play. And the funny part was, I'm a baby-faced guy, so the coach actually thought I was a freshman. And so I make final cut, and then one day randomly he says something like, "Hey, where's this guy? He hasn't shown up for practice. He's a freshman like you." And I go, "What you talking about, coach? I'm a senior." And he goes, "You're a senior?" He's like, "I can't play you. I thought you were a freshman, and I had 4 years to kind of build you up to actually getting minutes maybe on varsity." And so, I wrote him this whole letter being like, "Look, it's been my dream to hoop here, and it's been a 4-year process, and I finally made the cut. Like, I just want to be part of the program in any way." And I was lucky. A couple of things went my way, apart from busting my ass in practice. A couple of guys I think ended up with some NCAA issues with eligibility. And so there was a jersey and a spot for me at the end of it. So I got to play about 15-20 minutes a game on JV, and that was my claim to fame.
Got to play at the Palestra, man. Legendary.
It's all that matters.
Yeah.
It's all that matters. Probably the best, if not second best, gym in all of college basketball, outside of maybe Cameron Indoor has it on us, but that's about it.
Yep. I mean, plus the Philly Catholic League championships are down there. I remember go down there when I was a kid, and we would watch. So my dad went to Roman Catholic, so we would watch like Roman play Newman Goretti, and it was that may as well have been the NBA championship to me at that time.
Right.
It was awesome. But cool, man. So did you ever think that did you have entrepreneurial dreams at that time, or you kind of like, I'm going to go the quote unquote traditional route and then figure it out? Because would love to just share or have you share Krossover and like the start of that.
Yeah, no, I never ever thought I was going to be a traditional guy. I mean, I figured at some point maybe I'd have to get a job just because I didn't know any better. But I also, from the time I was 5 years old, I was always that kid that was trying to make money on the side. I was always selling candy in school. I was selling pirated DVDs back home in India. There was always something that I was selling to try and make an extra buck. And so I think that that was always a part of me. In Penn, I ran an eBay store out of my dorm room and made a ton of money doing that. And so I think it was always inherently there and somewhere in the back of my mind that I was going to be an entrepreneur. I just probably didn't know what that really meant and what shape it was going to take. And then all my classmates had spent 4 years doing internships. I had done nothing. Like every summer I went back home to India and I hooped in some of the local leagues there. And so I think that ultimately when I was towards the second half of senior year, realized that there was an opportunity to start to build software for the Penn basketball team. Initially thought, okay, this could just be a senior project that would be helpful for our basketball team to get better and to win more games. And then the more I thought about it, the more I realized, well, if Penn needs this, there's got to be plenty of other teams that would need it as well. And so by the time I had graduated, already in the back of my mind, I thought that I was going to start Krossover. I didn't know it was going to be called Krossover yet, but I sort of had the blueprint for what I wanted to do. Moved here and spent the next year kind of trying to figure out entrepreneurship, going to a lot of meetups, meeting founders, meeting investors, just trying to understand the landscape a little bit better. And it was a tough time. 2008 was the last financial crisis. There was not a lot of money out there, and the venture ecosystem was not nearly as developed as it is today in New York City. It was really a San Francisco thing back then. So there was always the thought in my mind, do I have to move out to San Francisco to do this? But I love New York. I love the pickup scene here and didn't want to leave New York for basketball reasons alone. And ultimately, it took me 18 months to raise $300,000 for a seed round back then, which was hard to come by. And even through the next 10 years, I was never really able to raise any venture capital money. It all came from angel investors and owners of pro sports teams and guys who were size and could write real checks, but no institutional VCs would give me money. They just never believed in what we were doing. And so ultimately built the business, just getting money wherever we could and building a great product that resonated with coaches. I mean, at the end, by the time we sold the business, we had about 10,000 customers across high school, college, AAU, and even the NBA teams ultimately some of them were buyers of our information and data on the high school kids and the college kids for draft purposes. So it was cool. It was a great learning experience. It was a tough business. It was never going to be $1 billion company, but we were cockroaches. As I always said, like we almost died 50 times along the way, and somehow we still made it to the end.
So then how were you thinking about that? Like, how did you manage that when you're maybe trying to go out and raise money from these VCs? You're like, hey guys, I have this awesome idea. Why are you not giving me money for this great idea that I've come up with? And so you had to go other routes. Like, did you ever get jaded by that or anything? Or were you just like, I'm going to keep going?
You just keep going. I mean, I think if you have that mentality, and that's the one thing about sports is like sports teaches you that you're probably going to lose more than you're going to win, right? Nobody wins every night. Michael Jordan didn't win every night. And I think for people who didn't play sports, you don't understand that, because if you were an A-type valedictorian, like every other kid at Penn, we're all the top of our class. We've all had a 4.0 our whole careers. And then you get to Penn and you suddenly realize, wait, you're not even on the level of most of these kids that are coming from wherever in the world. I think that was an eye-opening experience for me, but sports really for me was the thing that taught me that you're going to get kicked 1,000 times and you just get back up every single time after that. And that's why I like working with athletes a lot in my professional life too. At Krossover, we hired, almost everyone we hired was a high school or a college athlete, because I knew that those people understand what it is to lose, and yet to not have the memory of that loss. And it's like you miss your last 4 shots, you still take that 5th shot. If you stop shooting at that point, it's game over. And I feel like that was our mentality at Krossover. I never for a moment doubted that we would figure it out, no matter how many people said no to me. And it just meant, okay, well, stop wasting your time with VCs and go to someone else. And that's where we went. We went somewhere else and we raised the money and we got it done. And so, and like being on the other side of the table today, I understand. I would not invest in my own company as a VC because I get that it was not going to be that billion-dollar outcome that VCs need to be able to generate the returns that they need. And so I get it sitting on the other side of the table. But back then, and perhaps it was for the best, that I didn't understand venture economics. And so I just thought we just keep going, because had I understood venture economics, it may have told me to stop and to go do something else as opposed to doing what I did, which was just keep going. So sometimes it's good to understand, sometimes it's bad. I think if I had understood it, I probably would have wasted less time on VCs, and I would have just focused on the people that I ultimately ended up getting capital from.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's really cool. I want to ask you about kind of the latter part of your statement there, because I've heard you say that you answer, or at least look at, every single cold email, which is how I reached out to you. So you respect the grind, I guess, of especially these entrepreneurs that are like, hey man, I'm trying to raise some money. But what's like that fine line between quitting and then continuing to go? Because you say you're like, hey, we're not going to invest, but you have an idea here, so don't stop. Well, like you did not stop. So I don't know, what's that kind of balance there?
I mean, I try to tell everyone to be realistic. Like, just think about how big is this idea that you're working on? Because if it really was that big, I'm going to be jumping all over it, right? I'm the first line of defense for you. And I try to be as helpful and candid with founders to say, hey, there's something here and it's big enough, but here's why we're not doing it. And perhaps that but is just where we are in our cycle of deployment, or maybe there's a conflict of interest, or maybe we just don't like this category, but there's something still big enough, or it's we like this, but there's just no market that's big enough here for us to get the returns that we need. But hey, you can build a great $10 to $20 million business here, and you could sell this thing for 50 million bucks, and it'll be life-changing money for you. And so I try my best when I have conversations, seeing everything I've seen for 18 years in the space, to tell founders, hey, you're completely barking up the wrong tree and there's no business here. And most VCs won't say it to them, but I try to be as candid because I'm just trying to help them. And ultimately, if I can save them 5 years of their life of barking up the wrong tree, I'd like to do that. And then if I still think there really is a business, but it's just a lifestyle business, I try to tell them that too. And I say, don't waste your time with VCs. Stop calling them. Raise a little bit of angel money or friends and family money and go get the profitability as fast as you can. And then there's the, hey, no, there's something massive here. And that's when I'm all over them. I'm trying to get them to take my money, right? And if they don't see that, and if they don't see any VCs trying to get in, that should be signal enough that, hey, it doesn't mean they're working on a bad business. It may just not be the right business for venture capital, because every business isn't for venture capital. Most of the millionaires in America are self-funded, profitable entrepreneurs that collect cash every year from their business for 50 years. And then eventually maybe they exit, or maybe they don't ever exit, but they've collected cash along the way. The thing people don't realize, once you take money from a VC, you can't collect any cash flows. You're building and swinging for the fences for the next 10 years. And if you swing and miss, you're going to walk away with almost nothing at the end of those 10 years. And that's brutal.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, this might be an elementary question, but say you're an entrepreneur, or say you would have gotten venture capital money. What happens then? Like, you bank it, and then you're like, I mean, obviously you have a plan going into it. Like, this is where we're going to use some of this money, but like, are there priorities usually that people should think of, or that's all dependent just upon what they're trying to build?
Yeah, I think it's very different. I mean, look, most of the money in venture capital generally goes towards human resource, right? You're hiring development talent, technical talent, product talent, sales talent, and most money just goes towards people. Once in a while, look, there might be a business in the regulatory space where you need the money in order to get a license that's going to cost you millions of dollars. Or if it's hardware, you got to put money towards hardware stuff. So it is very business dependent, but for the most part, startup capital tends to go almost entirely towards people, and then some amount of marketing and sales in order to actually get the product out to market, right? So look, fundamentally, while I don't think that we had $1 billion business at Krossover, I do think had I gotten venture capital money, I probably could have built a $500 million company, a $250 million company, which still would have been good, but it wouldn't have been great for those VCs. So I understand fully, sitting on the other side, why people said no to me. But I do think sometimes there's that middle ground. And so that's where small funds can be beneficial to the market, because if you only have a 25 or a $30 million venture fund, now you can sell that business for $200, $300 million and still return your fund off of that deal if you own 10% of it, right? I'm at the point now where we're running a $100 million fund. That means for my 10%, I got to believe that you're going to be able to build a $1 billion business. Otherwise, the economics just don't work. So, it's company dependent, it's fund dependent, it's size dependent, like all of that matters ultimately. So it is very much on a case by case basis, I think, as to where that money goes and how much money needs to go into something to win.
Yep. Yeah. The $1 billion business thing is so crazy. Like what you say, what you see 6,000 to 8,000 companies per year. Like that's what comes across your desk. And just the fact that's what I was just thinking about it before. It's such a crazy thing. And it kind of goes back to you building your own startup. It's like, you're wrong. 85% of the like 85 to
90%
of
the time we're wrong after we have sifted through and only picked
and done so much
something like 0.3% of all companies we look at, we actually invest in, and we're still wrong 90% of the time. That's a terrible business. And yet venture capital is one of the best businesses if you're pretty good at your job.
Yeah, for sure. Just to take one step back real quick, like you said that you kind of regretted selling Krossover when you did because PE came in, like, so that I'm wondering too, kind of the differences between private equity and venture, because PE kind of strips everything down. Is like, hey, let's really make this super efficient, but venture capital is similar to entrepreneurship, right? Where you're like, all right, we're gonna build something. We're more maybe creative, or I'm not sure what the
Yep.
word would be exactly, but if you could do that over again, what would you do?
Yeah, well, I was just having this conversation with someone yesterday. It was just funny because he had worked for a private equity shop and he was just telling me, he's like, dude, I had to leave after a year because they're so ruthless. He's like, I couldn't even handle it. And I worked for the PE firm. And he's like, they would just come to me 6 months in and they're just like, fire, 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 fire. And he's like, we've only given them 6, it doesn't matter. Cut, right? They're just ruthless. I'm just not that guy. Like I would be terrible at private equity because you have to think of everything and everyone as just a line item on a spreadsheet. And that's just not my mentality. And so I think it takes a very different person to be a private equity investor versus being a venture capital investor. You almost have to be the eternal optimist to be a venture capital investor. Every meeting I take, I'm like, yes, this person's going to change the world, right? Versus PE just comes in, they're like, how can we extract every single drop of juice from this company and then run it into the ground if we have to? Like, who cares? Saddle it with debt, take dividends out along the way. As long as we make our money, screw everyone else, right? Like that is literally private equity's entire mindset is we don't care what happens to anyone else as long as we make our money. Whereas venture is a little bit more collaborative. And I feel like even when we have the opportunity to be sharks and to just cram something down a founder's throat, we think about it 10 times of like, do we really want to be those guys that took advantage of this situation? Like, let's be a little nicer. Like, let everyone make money along the way. Again, maybe that's why we will never be as rich as the private equity guys who own all the teams and own their private jets and their yachts. But you know what? I'm fine with that. I'm happy if everybody wins and we all make less money, but make money together than to be the only guy who wins. And to me, that's what venture capital in many ways is about, is changing the world together with the smartest people. But I just think they're fundamentally different businesses, fundamentally different approaches to investing. And that's not to say that private equity guys are, the worst people on earth, although I'm sure some of them are, and I'm sure some of the others aren't. It's just not a business that I could ever see myself doing. And so, I ended up selling to them and I saw that they said one thing to me on the day before we closed. They said X, and then they come into the office the very next day and it's the exact opposite of everything they told me to my face the day before. And it just cut, right? And I hated it. I hated that whole thing. So on the one hand, I regret that I sold to them because of the way they treated our people and how and again, that's just their approach. It wasn't personal. It's business to them, literally. And on the other hand, I think a lot more happened within sports after we sold, right? We came around, then there were, 5 other funds that came around, and now you've got focused sports private equity guys, you get focused sports growth equity guys. There's a couple of public companies that have been created in this space. So there's so much more activity that I think we would have ultimately been able to sell that business to somebody else that would have been more accretive for us. It would have been a better outcome for us, but also more importantly, the company would have lived on and it would have been thriving, as opposed to seeing them kind of strip it for parts as they did, and then ultimately just sell it off to somebody else. And so that's why I regret it.
Yeah. Well, hindsight's 2020, as they say, right? I mean, that's probably the best opportunity that was right in front of you. In terms of, so what you guys are doing now with Courtside Ventures, it's very cool. Larry Fitzgerald, is he on the board, or are you like, do you work alongside him? How does that work?
Larry's an LP in our fund, but we also, he's just been so helpful. He's such a thoughtful person that we made him an advisor to our firm last year. And, that just means we can pick Larry's brain on things. We can, we went on Bloomberg together a couple of weeks ago. We spoke at the primary summit here in New York together. It's nothing super formal, but we just felt like we wanted to show Larry some love because of how much love he's shown us. And he's a one-of-a-kind guy. I haven't met too many athletes that think about things and act the way Larry does. He's a true professional on and off the field. And so it's just been a joy getting to know him.
Just an impressive guy. I listened to that, whatever the summit was. He was kind of busting your chops up
over a lot of things. And then on Bloomberg, he had the gall to say that I'm just an average basketball player.
Jeez, unbelievable. Yeah. I'm sure Larry could, if he was on your pickup hoops or your hoops team, I'm sure he would be a good addition. But
no doubt.
For Courtside Ventures, I would love to hear about like those, because what is it, 19 different criteria that you guys look at, one for investing, but then because you say the market size has to be there, but then right after that it's the founders. So like kind of that balance is interesting to me, but the criteria, I obviously don't walk through every single step, but maybe what are some of those criteria you're looking at when validating those?
Yeah, I always say, venture to me is just as much art as is science. In many ways, it might be more art than science, but we try to bring as much science to it as we can in order to, one, be a little more data driven, two, just be a little bit more disciplined, right? It's very easy to get enamored with ideas and founders, because every founder that makes it to the point of being able to pitch us is pretty damn good. And they're probably telling a great story, and they're selling us something that we're like, oh, the passion is flowing through here. I love this. I want to back you. So you got to have some sort of criteria in which you're going to grade this stuff in order to, again, have some benchmarking and give yourself a gut check on why or why not you should or should not do a deal. And for us, that came in the form of something that I took from the way we used to prioritize product features at Krossover. It was something that our product managers would do a lot about, which is for every product feature that had been requested, whether it was from me, from the sales team, from the marketing people, from our customers themselves, every couple of months we would go through this process where we would list out every single feature that was on the docket that had been requested. And then we would grade it in terms of, well, what is the difficulty to do this? What is it going to cost us to build it? What is the revenue implication? Is it going to add more customers? Is it going to retain customers? And so we had, I don't know, I don't even remember how many criteria, but let's just say there were 10 criteria, and everyone that was a stakeholder in the business would sit there in a meeting, and we would each grade each of those things, and then we could then sort by highest priority to lowest priority. And then there was a very clear answer now to the sales team when the sales guy said, hey, I've asked you for that feature for 3 years and you haven't built it yet. It's like, hey, you were part of the group that graded this. Look at where you graded it. It's not even on your top 10 list, right? And so it's just very easy to explain to people why you are or not doing something. And so I took that and I sort of brought it into venture, and we created these 19 different criteria that ranges anything from, revenue opportunity, the size of the market, the founding team, the domain expertise of the founding team. Is there platform risk in this business? How accretive can we be to the business? So like, what is Courtside value add? Is it, can we really change the market here and move the needle for these guys? Or are we just a passive investor? And so again, there's 19 different things. I'm not going to waste people's time going through all of them, but we ask each person on our team, all 5 people, from our most junior person all the way to me, everybody grades individually without talking about it, and then we have a discussion after the fact so that we're not sort of influencing each other's decision. And then we can very clearly show someone who might be enamored with the deal, hey man, look at where this thing graded. It's not even close to what the lowest number is that we need for it to hit our benchmark to even move to the next step of diligence. Or maybe it is, or maybe it's blown everything out so far out the water, we better move quick on this deal, because if we feel this way about this deal, there's probably going to be 10 other VCs that are going to feel the same way. So let's move faster, right? So it's really just a benchmarking system that brings some science into the art of venture investing.
Interesting. Has there ever been a founder that you thought wouldn't have met or didn't not meet all those criteria that was like so good you're like, all right, we still need to do this?
Yes, but it rarely ever works out that way, right? I think that the data doesn't lie usually. And so even when we've historically gone back and looked at our companies that are now performing the best and where we graded them versus the rest, like those few outliers are true outliers. Like they blew the rest of the numbers out of the water. And so it's a learning for us. Like it's very easy to fall in love with a venture deal. Don't do it. Like you don't have to do every deal. You can't do every deal in venture. As long as every deal that you do is great, you don't have to do every great deal, right? And that's important because everything's an opportunity cost. You only have a limited pool of capital to work with.
Yes, you have to take the emotion out of it most of the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What was it with because one of your biggest, if not the biggest, is the athletic, if I'm not mistaken. What did you expect that to return as much as it did, or like what was it about that just totally? Like I was reading an article today. Actually, it was about because I'm interested in the whole James Franklin thing going on, and like I was reading about the buyout, and he was in the same article as Bill Belichick. And I'm like, for one, that's probably not a great thing to be tied in an article with Belichick right now, but it was on the Athletic, and like it's just a really good platform.
Yeah, I mean, look, did we expect it to be as good as it is? I have to say yes, in that we would never have done the deal if we didn't think it was going to return a ton of money, right? If we never thought that, then we shouldn't have done the deal to begin with. So just from that process alone, I have to say the answer is yes. On the other hand, I think their trajectory of how fast they grew kind of blew us away. The thing that got us to do that deal, we actually met Alex and Adam 2 days before they launched their first city of Chicago. And we said no to them for their pre-seed round because we didn't have enough data to suggest that people would actually pay a subscription for sports content. It had not really been done at scale before. And so we said to them, look, we really like both of you. We really like what you're building. We believe in the idea, but we need to see some data. And so they went and they launched in Chicago, and they came back to us with 6 months worth of retention data. And it was the retention data that got us over the hump, because what we saw was that about half of their subscribers were annual, half of them were monthly. Well, the yearly subscribers don't tell us anything, because until a year comes and renewal is up, we have no idea whether these people actually like the product or not. But the monthly subscribers were renewing at something close to a 98% renewal rate month over month. And that's where we're like, oh shit, you guys have built something really sticky here that people love. We're ready to back you. So we led their seed round, and then we saw them grow from like 20 subscribers to 20,000 subscribers in a very short period of time. And we said, wow, this thing's a rocket ship. We led their Series A as well again. And then we sat on their board till the end. We reinvested in the Series B. And then, by then the big boys from Silicon Valley had come in and piled real money into the business. And 5 years in, they were able to sell for a healthy chunk of money.
Yeah, it's crazy. From the outside looking in, I guess you just see that deal. You're like, oh, cool, they invested in them. But it is so data-driven. Like that's interesting that you guys turned them down first. But you're like, all right, people are coming back and paying for this on a recurring basis.
Exactly.
Super interesting, man. Are you guys typically, because I'm sure you have an incredible reputation, especially in the sports space, like where do you fall in line maybe if some of these founders are, I don't know, I don't know the landscape super well, transparently, but like, are you oftentimes somebody's first call, like, hey, Vasu, we have a cool idea. What do you think?
I would like to think so. And given the amount of deal flow that we see, and the fact that we've only lost one deal in we're about to hit our 10-year anniversary in a month or two here, and we've only ever lost one deal, and it was to Andreessen, which, it's Andreessen, I get it. And it was really only because we didn't have enough money to do the whole deal ourselves, and they did. And so we gave them a term sheet for half the round and said we'd help them fill the rest of it. And Andreessen came in and gave him the full round, and he was like, guys, they're making my life too easy. And that one hurts because literally 18 months later, he sold the business for $350 million. And, that would have returned a decent chunk of our fund. But such is life. Like I said, you can't do every deal. So, yeah, I would like to think, at least within sports, to some extent within collectibles and wellness and fitness, we tend to be the first, if not first, couple of phone calls. So at least we get a look at things. And in gaming, I would like to think we're first 5 phone calls, because there are a couple other gaming funds out there. But our partner in gaming is extraordinary, and he's so connected within that space that even if the first phone call was to a different fund, I imagine that fund is going to call Kai and say, hey, what do you think of this deal? And so we get our pick of the litter, and it's our job to see every single deal and hopefully to pick a couple of good winners per fund. But it's so easy not to do that. If you're making 30 bets, it's not that hard to go 0 for 30. I mean, you can go 0 for 30 in a shooting contest real easy too. And so to do that in venture is not hard at all. And we have to go 2 for 30, 3 for 30 to be a top 10% fund in the world. And so far we've been able to do it, but you got to be able to do it consistently, fund after fund after fund. The best fund in the world can return 3x every single time, which means they have 3 giant winners usually per fund to get there.
Yeah.
And we're still early in our careers. We're only 10 years in. We haven't even been through a full one cycle of one fund, right? Because most of these funds are 10-year funds. So we're still on fund 1 technically in terms of our cycle, but we're investing out of fund 4. So I can't even sit here and tell you if I'm good at my job yet 10 years in. Like, where else can you say that somebody can tell you or can't tell you if they're good at their job? But here we are.
Not many. Yeah, that's for sure. It's funny because like you could go, yeah, like you were just saying, you could go 0 for 25. I was telling you I'm a Phillies fan. Kyle Schwarber last night, he was 0 for 22 going into his bat. He hits a home run, and like the floodgates could open from here.
There you go.
You never know. But, all right, so that is awesome, man. Just thanks for the time. If you don't mind, I just want to ask you a few more things, like from the person aspect. I'm wondering, are there any questions that maybe like a 1 or 2 questions that you like to ask that really pulls something out of somebody that, I don't know, gets really shows not their character really, but like, all right, this person is going to do well?
I like to see work ethic early. And so it's not so much a question, but I will oftentimes email a founder at like 10 p.m., 11 p.m. at night and track when they actually respond to me, right? Because if they're up and they're busting ass at midnight, I know that as somebody whose money they want, they're gonna get right back to me and email me at midnight. If it takes them 3 days to get back to me and I'm a source of capital to them, I'm sitting here going, what are they doing? Like, and I say this all the time, like I don't have that many skills. I built a career on responding to people quickly and concisely. And that's it. Like all the billionaires that gave me money for my fund and then for my company before that, it's you email me at 1 a.m., you'll get a response at 1:20 a.m., right? Unless it's something that I have to actually like go and do research on and come back to you. But even then, I'll probably acknowledge your email and say, hey, I'm working on this, because it's important for me, for them to know that I'm on top of it and that I've received their email and I'm gonna get to it, right? I just feel like it's a lost art. Like the idea of being able to communicate concisely, coherently, and quickly is just a lost art form. And I like to see that in my founders. And so oftentimes that's what I'll do and see how they are with that.
That's interesting. So if you're raising money from Vasu, you better have your phone. You better have your phone on the. That's cool, man. They say availability is the best ability. So
absolutely.
All right, man. So on your website, you have there's like percentages of things that you can probably be found doing. One of them is horology. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
You are, yeah.
The study of time and measuring it. Is that accurate? Like, without getting too philosophical, I guess. Like, what is that? Like,
I think that's a fancy way of saying I like expensive watches. And so that's really all that is I love
so
high end timepieces.
there's no deeper
No,
meaning to that one.
there's nothing deep in there. But I treat my watches like my venture investments, in that I like to go and find kids that are coming out of watchmaking school. They're 22 years old in France, and I try to see what their senior design project is and figure out if they've got skill at 22, and I'll contact them online and I'll say, hey, instead of going and working at a big brand, you should start a brand yourself, because I think you've got talent. And I'll go and get 10 guys who I know are watch enthusiasts, and we will fund your first watch for you by buying it up front. And so again, it's a very different mentality in Switzerland. They're not trying to raise capital and give up equity. Like, they don't like doing any of that. I've tried multiple times to invest into watch brands, and every one of them has turned me down. Right. And I don't think that most watch brands will end up being great investments from an equity perspective, but the watches themselves, shoot, I've bought watches that have 10x, 20x in value. And I didn't buy them for that reason. I bought them because I love them. Like any artwork, to me, they're wearable art. And so, there's a hunt to this whole thing of trying to evaluate and find young watchmaking talent and believing in them early and backing them the same way I do with venture. And I've done a ton of that, and it's been a ton of fun. And to be honest with you, I tell people all the time, the least amount of joy I get is when I actually receive the watch. It was the process leading up to getting that watch, which was the most fun that I had. The minute you've gotten it, the dopamine hit is gone, and now you're already trying to get that next one. And so it's been a fun 10 years of being in this hobby, and I've met so many amazing people. I actually got to Michael Jordan because of watches, not because of basketball, and he wrote us a check as an LP in this new fund. So horology finally paid off for me.
So good choice of hobbies there.
There you go.
You love, you love the game, man. That is all, well, literally and metaphorically, I guess. Yeah,
Yep,
literally
yep.
hoops, and then you just love the game of this grind. So awesome,
Absolutely.
man. Favorite hoops player of all time? Is it Jordan?
MJ, there's no doubt. It's MJ, and then it's Steph for me. One A and one B. I tell people Michael was this mythological figure for us growing up, right? He was not here in the social media era. You never got to see the behind the scenes. All you saw is Mike a couple times a week on NBA, on NBC, and that was it. And so, growing up, if you had told me I'd be in business with Michael Jordan, I'd tell you you're out of your mind. Like, there isn't a chance in hell that Mike is ever going to be anywhere in the same room as me, let alone, officially in business. But Steph Curry to me is more of a contemporary. He was somebody that I met when he was still in his first couple of years in the league, and he was a nobody. Like, nobody thought Steph was going to be as great as he was, but I was a Steph fan from the time he was at Davidson. I had dinner with him one night. We sort of became friends, and I've been able to follow his career as somebody who physically, actually literally he knows my name and I know him, and we've met a bunch of times. And so it's been a different relationship for me because he's somebody that's my age and I can relate to. And then Mike was this mythological figure. And so Mike is always the GOAT to me, and will always be the GOAT. But Steph was like the GOAT amongst my age group of people that you could still have a relationship with, because he's such a humble guy. So it's been really fun for me to have these two experiences in my life of two people who've given me so much joy. 82 nights a year, you turn on television, and for 2.5 hours, everything else goes away, and you just get to watch the greatest in the world do something. So for me, it's been the joy of my life for 38 years to watch Michael for the first half and Steph for the second half of.
Man, that's so cool. I mean, you ask any kid if they're going to grow up to be working alongside Michael Jordan, they would all tell you you're crazy. I mean, he is a mythological figure pretty much, but
Yeah.
That's very cool working alongside Steph. That's funny because I was just catching up with a kid today. We're kind of talking about Philly sports and everything, and we were talking about AI because I was a huge Sixers fan growing up, and that was Allen Iverson for me, man. He was the best. I remember him stealing the ball and taking it down the court and laying it up with time running out, and
Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, well, Vasu, Thanks so much. Yeah, thank you for giving me the time and responding to my cold email here. So I
Absolutely, man.
I
Happy to do
really
it.
appreciate it. Awesome.
All
All right.
righty.